I've made a video about the cycle of abuse, and in it I've explained that a narcissist will start off with putting someone on a pedestal, treat them like they're a queen or king, depending on whether they're male or female, and generally just behave as if they're the most amazing thing that's ever happened to them. Anyone who's been following the Chris Watts case, I talked about how he was with Nicole, and how the cards he sent her, and how he was going on holiday with her. He went on a weekend away. He was looking for jewelry. All of this kind of thing, and that's quite typical of how a narcissist behaves at the beginning of a relationship. And the kind of person who is drawn to a narcissist is someone who very often has come from a background where they didn't get their emotional needs met. And it's not always the case. You can get someone who's just going through a rough time, feeling really vulnerable, their confidence is really low, maybe some really rubbish things have happened to them, maybe they've lost their job or they've lost someone really close to them. There's lots of things that can make us feel really vulnerable, bad health as well. So, but most people, certainly almost everyone that I speak to who is in or has been in an abusive relationship, had limited emotional support when they were growing up. And so because of this, there's a void inside them. And when they meet a narcissist who makes them feel amazing, this void feels as if it's filled. Because the narcissist just makes them feel like they're really loved and they're special, and gives them everything they've been missing out on and craving so badly. And often they might go through life not even knowing they're craving it until they meet this amazing person, or this person who seems amazing. And so what happens is they get drawn into these relationships with these people who give them this missing part of them, this validation that they haven't had as a child. And so it can be really tempting to fall into a relationship like this. And the way that a narcissist goes about having a relationship with someone is to go really full on at the beginning. And so it's called love bombing, and it really is like that. The person who gets abused in the end is sort of sent more and more messages about how great they are. This person is constantly flattering them, making them feel amazing, and so they start to get addicted to getting this good feeling and feeling like they're loved and having this void filled. The relationship changes when the narcissist starts to move into the next phase of the cycle and to devalue the victim. And they can do this in so many ways, and I'm going to talk about the different ways they do this in other videos. But what happens is the victim of the abusive relationship starts to crave even more this validation because they had become dependent on it. They're already someone who would find it difficult to find that validation in themselves and would look outside of themselves to find it. And so when they're given this validation over and over again, they stop even trying to find it in themselves. They stop trying to find it in anyone else, because it's not easy to feel validated if you don't have that belief inside yourself that you're okay. And people who didn't get the emotional support they needed growing up don't think they are okay. They have a lot of negative feeling towards themselves, because children always blame themselves if they don't get that support, and that validation that they need from their parents. And I'm going to talk more about that as well in other videos. But what happens is, when this validation is switched off, it's a bit like suddenly stopping a dose of heroin to a heroin addict. They become really desperate for it. They really crave it because they've grown accustomed to getting it, and every person needs that feeling, so they crave it. And And so what often happens is a narcissist, once they start devaluing somebody, instead of the victim moving away from them because of the bad behaviour, what often happens is the victim then comes towards them even more, just, as if they're asking, like, what's happened, where's it gone, give it to me, just give it to me, this desperate feeling. And so this becomes a pattern where the narcissist can supply this validation and all this, all of this love bombing and make this person feel amazing, because they know that doing that is going to keep this person there. They know that they've become addicted to it. And so that enables them to then abuse them at other times, knowing that they're not going anywhere, because as soon as they turn on the love bombing, the victim is going to come running back again. I think the major reason somebody stays with a narcissist is because they buy into this persona of the narcissist. And so when the narcissist is behaving as if they're loving, the victim can believe that this is the real them. And so when they then devalue them, the victim just doesn't want to believe that. Because if they believe that, it means that they don't get this love bombing that they're addicted to. And we very often believe what we need to believe in order to survive. And so this person believes that is that's the real person, that the kind and loving persona is who they really are. And when they're being degraded and devalued and humiliated and shamed, all of this stuff, they think that there's something they can do to change that and to get to the real person who's the kind and loving person. The victim doesn't know that they're being played and that this whole thing is an act. And what doesn't help is that very often they will have empathic feelings for the narcissist. Narcissists, because they didn't emotionally grow up, because emotionally they're at a very young age, a victim can often sense this. They're often highly empathic. And so, because the kinds of people who are drawn to narcissists are very often very empathic people, and so they can sense that the narcissist has a sort of childlike quality, and they can feel protective over this person. If they're women, they can often feel that their maternal instinct kicks in, and they have maternal feelings towards the narcissist. And a lot of women stay in abusive relationships. Sometimes they even end up getting killed because of this maternal instinct and because of misplaced empathy with the narcissist. So what happens is the person who's in the relationship with the narcissist starts to go towards the narcissist even when they're being treated badly, because they can't afford to step back. And so what ends up happening is the narcissist realizes that the victim is now in their power, and they can just continue to manipulate them, give them what they need sometimes, take it away at other times, and be abusive towards them. And they know this person will just keep coming back. And what happens to the victim is that they are getting traumatized and then re-traumatized and re-traumatized again. And so in their brain, our brains are very malleable. We have neural pathways that can change as we learn new behaviours. And so every time this person is traumatised, this neural pathway is being strengthened and strengthened until it gets to the point where it's the person is permanently in a state of stress, really high anxiety. And at that time they have adrenaline rushing through them, they have cortisol in their bload, and it's been proven that when you have cortisol in your blood, you're not able to process things as well. Your brain doesn't work as well, your memory doesn't work as well, your attention is not as good, and so you basically can't think straight. And so then the victim is basically like a rabbit caught in headlights. They can't make decisions for themselves. They can't think clearly, and they're being sort of controlled by their body, by both their body and by their addiction. There's also something called learned helplessness, which is when somebody is so used to being under someone else's control that they don't think for themselves anymore. They just don't trust themselves at all. And so what happens is they just don't function without the other person. That's codependency, and codependency to quite an extreme. And that often happens as well when someone's in this kind of relationship, that they just don't trust themselves at all. They don't trust their feelings, they don't trust their judgments about anything, and so they end up staying even when things feel terrible to them. And not only do they have this learned helplessness, but they've developed a trauma bond with this narcissist, because every time we go through something traumatic with someone, we bond with them. You know, that's why if you go on a date, it can be good to watch a horror film together, because then you kind of cling on to each other, you experience stress together and bond closely, you know. But that's obviously in the more positive way. In a relationship with a narcissist, the trauma bond is deeply destructive, because it means that when it's a bit like Stockholm syndrome, you know, it's when you go through something really traumatic and there's someone who's always there with you while you're going through it, and then after it they reward you with this golden period, with the validation and stuff, so that, you know, the good times feel so much better because of how painful the bad times were. And so you know, you cling on to those good times. They mean more to you than anything, and that bonds you more and more to the person. And that's also just a big confusion when you're trying to navigate your way out of a relationship. It can make it feel like it's impossible to leave, because you feel this strong attachment to the person. People can get impatient with victims of narcissistic abuse who stay in those relationships, and understandably so if they're concerned for that person. It's not your responsibility to rescue that person, however hard that is to accept. And it's the same with any addiction. The person's going to quit the addiction when they feel ready. The only thing you can really do is to send them information. You know, you can. I had someone contact me in the past asking me this question, and I said, point them to videos like this, to these videos, to other videos that you think are good, and just let them learn for themselves. Books, of course, you know, anything that might help them, but not you, because somebody in that kind of situation, pressure isn't going to help them, because pressure just leads to more emotional thinking, and the reason they're in that situation is because of emotional thinking. So the more stressed they are, the more torn they feel, the more emotional their thinking is going to become, and they're going to cling to what feels safe. And ironically, what can feel safe in that situation is just what's familiar. What feels safe to us all is very often just what's familiar, and not necessarily what really is safe. And for people who are in relationships like that, you can have so many excuses for why you stay. You know, it can be that you're waiting for your child to finish preschool, or, you know, or you're waiting until you have leave from your job, or it can be all sorts of things. But in reality, once you do leave, you'll look back and wonder why you left it so long. Every day that you stay in a relationship like that, it's damaging you more, and it's making the healing process longer. This video, the title sort of looks like it's aimed at people who haven't experienced narcissistic abuse, and I do think that education about that is really important, that people, you know, that there's an awareness about what really goes on, because that way people can have more patience with those who are involved with an abusive partner. you know, one of the biggest problems is that they don't have any support very often, and they're trying to cope with everything on their own. But to be honest, the people that were at the front of my mind when I was making that video were people who are currently in a relationship with a narcissist, with an abusive partner. And so I want to speak to you. I think that this video will hopefully be validating for you. But also I want to say to you that no one is going to be able to rescue you from this situation. I work with people in that situation. I can support that, you know, I can support people and talk through things with them. But at the end of the day, you are the only person who's going to be able to rescue yourself and take yourself out of that situation. You have to be your own hero. So if you take nothing else from this video, please take that you can't, there's nothing to wait for. And the longer a relationship like this goes on, the harder it's going to be for you to be able to think clearly. You're going to have to move out of that relationship while you still feel uncertain. You're not going to have the clarity that you're looking for from that person. So I'm going to leave it here, and I hope that was helpful, and I hope it was helpful for people who are in relationships like that, and also for people who are not, you know, for people just to understand generally why people stay in these relationships. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.